The demise of Hypatia in 415 AD is sometimes cited as a symbol of the conflict between science and religion, but it was not the direct cause of a split between the two. The idea of an inherent conflict between science and religion is largely a modern concept, especially influenced by the 19th century conflict thesis. The conflict thesis argues that science and religion are inherently at odds with each other, essentially posing a constant state of conflict between the two that contributed to the perception of a separation between the two. The conflict thesis claims that science and religion are fundamentally incompatible with one, undermining the other. But most historians of science today reject the conflict thesis, arguing that oversimplifies the complex relationship science and religion throughout history, where cooperation and integration have existed. So, what caused the split between science and religion? Two forces that have shaped human civilization, but today many people see them as enemies, locked in conflict. Was it always this way? What caused the supposed split between science and religion? Let's take a journey through history to uncover the truth. Contrary to popular belief, between science and religion were not always at odds. In ancient times, many of the greatest thinkers like Pythagoras, Plato, and others saw no conflict between studying the natural world and believing in the divine. In the Middle Ages, Christians' convents become centers of learning, preserving, and expanding scientific knowledge. Many early scientists, including great minds like Roger Bacon and Thomas Aquinas, saw their work as a way to understand God's creations. Meanwhile, in the Islam world, scholars like Al-Hasan and Avicenna made groundbreaking discoveries in optics, medicine, and mathematics, often inspired by their religious beliefs. So, where did things go wrong? The first crack appeared in the late Middle Ages and early Renaissance. During this time, the Catholic Church wielded immense political power, and some of its leaders feared challenges to traditional teachings. One key moment often cited is the trial of Galileo Galilei in 1633. Galileo heliocentrism, the idea that the Earth orbits the Sun, contradicted the church's accepted view at the time, though Galileo was a devout Christian. He was put on trial and placed under house arrest. But was this really a war between science and religion? Not quite. The church had actually founded Galileo observation, and many clergymen supported his ideas. His conflict was more about power and authority than science itself. The real shift came during the Enlightenment in the 17th and 18th centuries. Thinkers like Voltaire, Diderot, and Descartes began promoting reason and skepticism, often criticizing religious institutions. Some scientists, inspired by the success of the empirical methods, began distancing themselves from theology. At the same time, political revolutions, such as the French Revolution, sought to reduce the power of the church. In some cases, religion was portrayed as the enemy of progress. The 19th century brought Charles Darwin's theory of evolution that challenged traditional interpretations of creation. Some religious leaders opposed it, while others sought to reconcile it. Faith, but the growing rift between scientific materialism and religious beliefs fueled the idea that science and religion were irreconcilable. Today, many assume that science and religion are naturally enemies, but is that really the case? Many scientists, including figures like Francis Collins, a Christian genetics, George Lemaitre, a priest who proposed the Big Bang Theory, showed that beliefs and science can coexist. The supposed war between science and religion is, in many words, a modern myth. While conflicts have existed, much of history shows a complex relationships, sometimes tense, but often complementary. In the early 20th century, most scientists believed that the universe is static. It had always existed in a steady state. But one man challenged that idea. George Lemaitre, a Belgian Catholic priest and physicist. Lemaitre, using Einstein's equations, astronomical observations, proposed that the universe had a beginning, a moment when everything exploded from a tiny, dense point. This became known as the Big Bang Theory. Ironically, many scientists at the time rejected his view, not because they thought it sounded too much like the biblical idea of creation. Even Einstein himself was skeptical at first, but over time, evidence from Edwin observation of cosmetic background radiation confirm Lemaitre theory. So, if a priest played a key role in one of the greatest scientific discoveries, why do so many people think science and religion are enemies? To answer that, we need to go back a little further to the 19th century and one of the biggest turning points in the history, Charles Darwin theory of evolution. Darwin and the Great Divide. In 1859, Charles Darwin published In the Origin of Species, introducing the theory of evolution by natural selections. This was a game changer. Most Western scientists and the general public believe in special creation. The idea that God created all species as they are. But Darwin's work suggested that life evolved gradually over millions of years through natural processes. Some saw this as a direct challenge to biblical creation. If species evolve naturally, did that mean that God wasn't involved? Some Christian leaders opposed Darwin's ideas, fearing they undermined human uniqueness and divine creation. Others, like Catholic thinkers and some Protestant theologians, tried to reconcile evolution with faith, seeing it as a tool God used to create life. As time passed, the debate escalated. In the 20th century, fundamentalist movements rejected evolution entirely, while some scientists pushed a worldview where science replaced religion altogether. This is where the deep divide really took hold. Today, the supposed war between science and religion continues. Some atheists, like Richard Dawkins, argues science disapproves God. Meanwhile, some religious groups still reject evolution and Big Bang cosmology. But is this divide necessary? Many scientists, like Francis Collins, the geneticist who led the human genome, a strict believer. The Vatican itself accepts the Big Bang and evolution as part of God's plan. So did Darwin's theory of evolution cause the Great Divide, or did misunderstanding, fear, and power fight played a bigger role? Maybe, just maybe, the conflict is not as expected as we have been led to believe. Ultimately, whether science or religion complement each other depends on how they are understood and applied. Would you say the divide is growing, or do you see efforts to reconcile the two? Let me know in the comment section.